So like I said, I know last week was Easter, but did you know that Jesus is alive right now? Amen. Isn't that cool to know? You know what? That's all you need to know, honestly. We could say amen and walk out of the place if you knew that Jesus was alive and with you right now, because it means he's present spiritually with us no matter where we're at today. So no matter how you walked in here, if you walked in with burdens that you're carrying, if you walked in here with great joy because it's not raining this morning, if you walked in with something that you said, I just don't think Jesus can forgive me for this, the truth is that Jesus is here with us, he's walking amongst us, and he's willing to meet you where you are this morning. And that's all because he's alive. That's the whole, he's alive, he's here, he's present, and that keeps me going. You know, we have this thing around Imprint Church that we talked about, and it's this idea of joyful expectancy. Like, I want to build an expectancy in our people. So it's not just like you come to watch a show, but you come to participate in something because, as the book of Revelation explains, when Jesus, symbolizing walking around the 7 golden lampstands in Revelation, that's Jesus who's walking among the churches, that he's here with us today, alive, present, wanting to meet with us no matter where we're at. And I find great joy in that. I find great hope in that. It's why I show up. And that's why I say I have joyful expectancy when I roll into Imprint Church on Sunday morning. The truth of the matter is that people are going to disappoint you. The church, Imprint Church, is going to disappoint you. If we haven't yet, just give us a few minutes. We'll get there at some point. Other church leaders are probably going to disappoint you. I'll probably have a bad sermon or 5 or 25 in my lifetime. All of those things will disappoint. But if Jesus shows up, it doesn't matter. Like, anything else is secondary to him being here, being alive and with us. I hope I can infuse that into you today. And I hope that you believe that and walk out with a certain sense of expectancy. It's what our whole series is that we're talking about right now, called Living Jesus, which is a study of the Gospel of John. If you have your Bibles, why don't you open up to John chapter 8. But by way of introduction, I'm not sure I've done a super great job of explaining our series yet because we had a couple church holidays that were there. We had kind of Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, which were fantastic. And many times we go through books of the Bible here at Imprint Church, and we are doing that right now. We're going through the Gospel of John, but the way we're doing is a little differently in that we're doing these 7 sayings of Jesus throughout the Gospel of John that he says about himself. And we call them the famous I am statements of Jesus Christ. And there's 7 of them in there that you'll find. And a lot of this is kind of inspired by Warren Wiersbe's book, Jesus in the Present Tense. So if you're looking for some study resources to go along with our series, you're welcome to pick that up and read through that book, which is great. And there are 7 statements that Jesus says about himself where he says, I am something in the book of John. They are, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door of the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am the true vine. These are 7 I am statements that Jesus says throughout the book of John. And they may not sound all that impressive to you, but we have to understand the context. It's not Jesus just saying, hey, I am a really nice guy, or, I am a good baseball player, or some characteristic about himself. He's actually giving us his identity in this, and he's revealing something about himself to us so that we know who he is. And we find the context of these I am statements really in John chapter 8, where he defines what he's talking about together, and he shows us his identity there in like no other place for us to kind of go, oh, this is the connection between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God. I always thought they were different. I always thought there was this God of the Old Testament who was kind of, judgmental, and he was kind of like weird. He required people to offer sacrifices and all these kind of things. But there's a connection between that God of the Old Testament and Jesus in the New Testament. And Jesus himself even says it. I want to read to you a part of John 8, verses 53 and following, that talks about what Jesus' own admission on who he is. And let's read these words. Let me give you a little context here. Jesus is having kind of a conversation, or let's call it a confrontation, with the Jewish leaders of the day. And these religious leaders are really frustrated with Jesus because he's making some pretty crazy claims. Claims that the Jewish leaders understood him to say, like, Jesus is saying he's all that and more. Like, he's saying he's God. And that's what we see in John 8, verses 53 and following. So here's the Jewish people asking Jesus, are you greater than our father Abraham, who died and the prophets died? Who do you make yourself to be? Who are you? Jesus answered, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God. But you have not known him. How intense would that be? You don't know him. You think you know him, your God, Father, your prophets. Like, you don't understand him because you don't realize he's glorifying me. Jesus goes on to say, you don't know him. I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. He's making a lot of friends right here, isn't he? But I do know him, and I keep his words. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old, you youngster. What are you talking about here? And you have seen Abraham? Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. So they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. The Jews were offended. They were more than offended, actually. They were angry at Jesus' words here. They wanted to kill Jesus because of something he claimed. He claimed that he was the same God as the God of the Old Testament. This title, I am, shows up really in the second book of the Bible. If you don't know the Bible history at all, it shows up in the second book of the Bible called Exodus. And in Exodus 3, Moses, another leader of the Israelite people, was asking God what he should be named. When the people around him, as he's leading this people, when they come to him and say, who is the God that I should follow? And God gives him a crazy thing where he says in Exodus 3:14, tell them that I am who I am. That's my name. I am who I am. It's a very weird kind of name, isn't it? I am who I am. But do you see the connection between Jesus in this day and I am God of the Israelites back in Exodus 3? Jesus is making a connection here, saying, I am that guy. The same God of the Old Testament is the same God of the New. Here's what's interesting. The name I am is the Hebrew word that we pronounce Yahweh. You'll see it as Lord in your English translations. In fact, if you ever read your Bible and you get a chance to read the Old Testament, if you ever see the word Lord that's all capitalized, that's that name, that I am name that Jesus says is for him. And ultimately, God reveals himself to the Israelites as that in the Old Testament. So anytime you see all those capital letters in the Old Testament, you'll know that's the name that God had given to Moses for the Israelites to know who he was. And it really conveys some amazing things. It conveys this idea of absoluteness, an absolute being, that Jesus is the one and God is the one whose dynamic presence works in our behalf. It conveys this meaning of I am who I am. I don't change. I'm here with you and I'm for you. The name simply indicates some sort of presence, just like it would today. If you said I am, it would indicate some sort of presence, and that's so cool. God's name here means I'm always here, I always have been, and I always will be. You can almost take that promise as a daily reminder to yourself. Oh yeah, I serve the God of the I am. He's with me right now. He's living. He's alive with me every single day. I am. That's beautiful for me. I don't know if that gives you hope and gives you meaning in your life, but it certainly does for me. God says this to Moses to tell us the people in the Old Testament that I am, and then Jesus shows up and says, I am the I am. The big idea that I want you to walk away from is this, that Jesus is living and active in our world and can be in your life right now, which is why we call this series Living Jesus. That's the introduction. That's why we're doing this series. And so I hope you walk away from this whole series. Maybe you won't remember a lot of the details of this sermon series and all that stuff, but if you walk away with this profound sense that Jesus is I am, is with you every moment of your life, I consider that a huge win for this message, this sermon series. I consider that to be one of the most important things that you can have in your life, this sense that God is with me wherever I am. I love that. Jesus will prove that by these 7 sayings that we're going to look at it. And I've said it before, and I'll say it once again. We tend to study history and Jesus the same way. A lot of times we think Jesus is interesting. There's interesting things we see about him. He said some crazy things. There's things that we saw that he did back in the day. And instead, I think we need to change our view a little bit of how we study Jesus. It's not just a historical figure, but he is a present God now too. And so when we study Jesus, we think of him not just as a figure of the past, but a figure of the present who's working in our lives right now. And so we can ask him almost every day, what's next, Lord? What do you have for me today? If you really are the I am, and I really believe that at a deep level, then I have to say to you, what do you expect from me now? What's next for me, Lord? What do you say at this point? And that's unique for some of us. It sounds so mystical. It sounds so subjective in some ways. But the reality is, until our faith is made sight, that's what we have. We have a Jesus who's with us, and we have a way to say, okay, God's with me today. I need to live my life differently because of that. I want you to know that if your Christian life is to have any meaning at all, the key to transformation is this. Dynamic truth or divine truth only becomes dynamic life change when we understand that Jesus is doing new things each and every day. That's the truth. Divine truth only becomes dynamic life change only when we understand that Jesus is doing a new thing each and every day. We change only when we yield to Jesus by faith, moment by moment, and follow him. That's the truth. We don't do it necessarily by studying the past of Jesus and the things that he did, although it comes from that, and we certainly understand him. And as we read the word, we understand what Jesus would do in the present. But there's a sense of us submitting our lives to him every day and what he's calling us to do every day. And that's uncomfortable for some of us, right? Some of us more intellectual people who like to study the Bible like a history book. We go, yeah, I don't know what you mean. You're talking about like feelings or something. I don't get it, But the truth is, if we want dynamic life change, we have to understand that divine truth comes on a moment by moment from a living Jesus who's walking with us. All the philosophies and religious systems in the earth today have founders that can only say, I was. They're dead. They're gone. You can visit their graves even to this day. But Jesus doesn't say, I was. He is alive, and he says that I am. He can meet our needs today. He can satisfy our spiritual life. All this leads me to say that Jesus has a lot to do with your life, each and every moment, your relationships, your job, your money, your recreation, your everything. Does that make sense? Have I hammered it enough? Because I have a hard time getting it. Like, I'm just being honest. Sometimes I view my life as kind of the history guy. I like to read the Bible, and I like to get into it, and I like to study it, and I like the context, and you guys have probably learned that about me over the last year and a half or so. I like that stuff, and yet I have to remember Jesus is alive every day. He wants to affect my life today. He wants to speak to me now. And if I don't respond to him each and every day, I won't see that dynamic life change that I want to have happen to me. I won't see the sanctification that God wants to work out in my life. Instead, I'll just become smarter and probably more arrogant when that happens. And I don't want that. I want a God who's with me and present with me and who's saying, hey, I'm here. Darren, I'm right next to you. Don't you get that? Don't you want to respond to me each and every moment of the day? Today we learned something very simple yet difficult to grasp as we turn the corner to John chapter 6. And that is this: Jesus the I Am wants to be our ultimate desire. Jesus the I Am wants to be our ultimate desire. He wants to be our desire in a relationship with him more than anything else. But the problem with me saying that is it's somewhat abstract. It's somewhat of an abstract idea. Hopefully today you'll be able to apply it to your life, or maybe even get in community at some point. Maybe you'll get in a generosity group and you'll go through your generosity group questions this week, and you'll be able to kind of unpack this a little bit to understand what this means. But Jesus wants to be the desire of all of our hearts. Like more than anything else, he wants us to desire him. Now, before I get into the details of this, how many of you know what a bucket list is? You know what a bucket list is? How many of you have a bucket list, right? Do you have a bucket list on your mind? Do you know, are you brave enough? I'm curious. There's not too many of us here. Is anyone even brave enough to share something on their bucket list today? Who's got something on their bucket list that you're just dying to do? Bungee jump. I've done that. It's not as fun as you think. It actually hurt my eyeballs when I bungee jumped, but yes, kind of a weird story. It pulls your eyes, yeah, It's true. It really happens. I was like, it's a good bucket list thing, though. What else? What else is on your bucket list? Italy, going to Italy. Fantastic. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Learning to fly fish. I love that. That's there is a group of fly fishermen at Imprint Church. I'm sure they'd be willing to teach you. So you're sitting near one. I saw Chad Morgan over here. So he's a good fly fisherman. Yeah, yes. She said she wants to drive a forklift. That is awesome. I love that bucket list. That's so great. I know most of us have a bucket list. I have a bucket list too, and there's been things on there. One of my bucket list things is to play golf at Pebble Beach Golf Course. So Pebble Beach is up here. That's why I want to play golf there. And of course, while I was doing my sermon this week, I got distracted, right? Because I thought about my bucket list. And so I dove into this a little bit here. And I thought, what about Augusta or something like that? Some of these major courses, those are all private. You got to be too cool for school to get in those places, and I'd never get in there. But Pebble Beach is actually a public course. So I was like, this is actually possible. And then I looked up how much it costs. Do you know how much it costs? Sam knows. It's $595 for a round of golf at Pebble Beach. And I thought, that's going to remain on the bucket list a long time. Yes. Oh, we don't believe you. You paid $1,000 because you did it twice. No. That's amazing. I looked at this thing and I was like, wow, it's very unlikely that I'll ever get a chance to play that. But there's other things on my bucket list as well. I mean, things like I always thought it'd be fun to visit every stadium in the United States and Canada for baseball. Like I played baseball growing up. There's bucket list things. We've all got our bucket list things. And you know what a bucket list does for me? It tells me that you long for more. It tells me that you desire something more out of life. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a great thing. I think we all do. And I think the reality is that in order for Jesus to be our ultimate desire, he wants more from us too. And he wants ultimately us to desire him more than anything else. He wants us to see him not as a relationship to be grasped, but a relationship to be built, continuing on each and every day. This makes sense when you put in the context of a relationship around you, especially of a husband-wife relationship. You know, if I ever come to the point in my relationship with my wife where I say, well, I think I'm done getting to know her now. I've got all that I need to know about her. You think that would go over really well with her? Probably not. Probably wouldn't lead to the intimacy that I'd want out of a relationship. My relationship will suffer. But I know something about my wife, just like I know something about you and your spouse as well. That person doesn't want you to be in a relationship with them only for the memories and experiences of the past. They want you to be in a relationship with you to build memories in the future, to build life together going forward. They want, if you will, more from you. They want to require that of you as you walk through life together. Just like a bucket list. They have a bucket list with you. I want more. You know what? Jesus wants that too. He wants that more thing with all of us, and that's intense. We find this really in John 6. So if you flip back a couple pages, I want to read to you a little bit about some words when Jesus is asking people, and he says, I want more. I want more from you. I want more of a relationship with you. And we see this in John 6, verses 22 and following. We're going to read a little bit, so follow along with me. If you have your Bible on the screen behind me, you're welcome to follow along as well. Let's go on together. On the next day, the crowd that remained on the other side of the sea saw that there had been only one boat there and that Jesus had not entered the boat with his disciples, but his disciples had gone away alone. Other boats from Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum, seeking Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them, Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not labor for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him God the Father has set his seal. Then they said to him, What must we do to be doing the works of God? Jesus answered them, This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. So they said to him, Then what sign do you do, that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus then said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. They said to him, We have a bucket list. Sir, give us that bread always. We want that stuff. Verse 35, Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. But I said to you that you have seen me, and yet do not believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me I will never cast out. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all that he has given me, but raise it up on the last day. For this is the will of the Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him should have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. Good words here. Jesus is in the height of his ministry, and we read that large crowds were following Jesus up to this point. In fact, he was very popular. He had been working miracles and doing lots of things. He had just provided, in the context of the story, he had just provided the 5 loaves of bread and a few fish and turned them into food for 5,000 men and women and children beyond that, some 15 to 20,000 people most likely that he had fed, done all these miracles, and people were following him. And we realize, if we read back in John 6, verse 2, that the people were following him, quote, because of the miracles. That's why they were following him. They wanted the show. They saw that Jesus was doing something pretty cool, and so they followed after him because they were interested in the cool things that were happening. The main reason the crowds were there is because he was kind of a spectacle. But he wants to take them to the next level. He wants to help them understand something about himself. He wants to teach them. He wants them to understand something so simple yet so difficult to internalize in our lives. And that's this. When he says, I am the bread of life, if you come to me, you'll not hunger. He's saying, I am the one who will be your sustenance. I am the one that can fulfill you, and I can continue to fulfill you every single day. What this means is that Jesus wants to be our ultimate desire. That's what I mean by that. Jesus wants us to desire him and to walk with him. And here's the tension. We find our desire in so many other things, don't we? Like, it's easy to find our desires as we live day to day in so many other things that surround us. I mean, you can think about things that even aren't bad. They're not bad things. Things like making money in your job. We find that to be a huge desire in each of us. And maybe the ultimate desire for you is closing that deal. You know, if I can close the deal, I feel successful. I feel fulfilled. Or hearing from your boss, well done, that bonus is on the way. You know, that's a great thing. All of us would enjoy that thing. Or maybe it's having that nest egg. Maybe it's having enough money to do what you want to do with, like for me to be able to hit Pebble Beach one of these days or something. Some of us just desire stability, right? Some of us just say, if I can just be stable. All those commercials that come up about how people don't put enough money towards retirement, you know, have you seen those commercials? Like, I don't know, but I'm in that point right now, I'm freaked out. Like, am I not going to make it for the long run? What is that going to look like, you know? And yet, I don't learn from that because it's hard to put money away for retirement every month, you know, as much as I can. Maybe it's something else. Maybe your desire is something else. Maybe your desire is more for not success or money, but maybe it's for something like romantic love, which is not a bad thing either, right? Romantic love's a beautiful thing, and it's something many of us desire, and hopefully all of us desire to some level, that relationship and that connection. Maybe you're the chick flick person, all right? Even if you're a guy. Guys can like chick flicks too, I'm just saying, right? Maybe you like the movies where Mr. Right meets Miss Right. They fall in love, experience a crisis of relationship. They break up, and they kiss at the end all in 90 minutes. It's beautiful, right? You know, maybe you're one of those people that love those things. Maybe you like those things because they speak to a deep place inside you where you long for that love, that romantic love that's there. However, we find out in the midst of that, especially when we find romantic love, that it doesn't always completely fulfill us. It doesn't become the zenith of everything we've ever hoped for and dreamed, especially after we've been married for a few years and go, I'm not sure that's what I signed up for. This is kind of difficult sometimes. And we realize, the romantic love shouldn't be my ultimate desire. Maybe it could be anything else, a good health, a good reputation. You know, my weakness is, let me just give it to you, you'll probably hold this against me one of these days, I'm okay with that. Where I find desire most raw in my own life, if you will, is that I'm not super money focused, but I do find fulfillment in success and competency, which is hard to admit to you, but it's true. Like, I find that sometimes to be really compelling to me. Like, if people see me as smart, I feel like I've won, you know? And that's so weird. Maybe that's just a personality thing. Maybe that's just a thing that God's birthed in me as kind of my personality. If people think I got it together, I think I've been successful. And for some reason, I desire that at times, you know? I work out of that. I try hard to make sure that reputation is always there, you know? And ultimately, when I read something like where Jesus says, I am the bread of life, and I want to be your sustenance, I want to be your ultimate desire, it confronts that thing in my life. And it kind of fights against that thing in my life. And it could be anything. I'm giving you my weakness, but it could fill in the blank for whatever yours might be. It might be some of those things I just mentioned. But here's Jesus' words to us. For any that find fulfillment in anything besides a relationship with him, John 6:27, don't work for food that perishes, but work for food for eternal life, which the Son of Man gives to you. Beautiful. John 6:35, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall never thirst. There's something you can desire that's even greater than any of these other things that will perish, that will go away, that will ultimately not fulfill you. Don't seek out the small stuff, Jesus says. I am what ultimately fulfills you. The thing is so funny. When we fulfill some of our hopes and dreams, we find often the top is not as beautiful as we thought it was going to be. Isn't that true? I love how the Seahawks won the Super Bowl this year. Great moment. We were all so excited about that. It was so funny because literally 10 seconds after they won it, I heard someone say, we're not satisfied yet. You know, I'm like, what else are you going to do? Like, didn't you just win the Super Bowl? Like, no one else plays football in the world. Like, you just won. You're the best, you know? And like, we're still hungry. And we all get into that. We're like, yeah, they should get 5 now, you know? And we're not, it's just like that, this desire for more. We find that even when we get to the top, that sometimes the top isn't as beautiful as we'd hoped it to be. But here's the thing. Jesus says, I'm the bread of life that will cause you to no longer hunger, to no longer thirst. If you find your ultimate fulfillment and desire in me, that's a win. That's a huge win. In fact, you're going to be fulfilled in a way that you never would be anywhere else. It's interesting how Jesus has to explain to them that they are not doing the works of God by laboring for food that perishes in verses 25 through 33. And then he confirms that God is the only true bread, and Jesus says, I am that. You know, to determine if you're finding fulfillment in other things besides Christ, you have to ask yourself this simple question. How would I react if one of these things was taken away from me? How would I react if like for me in particular, how would I react if my competency was taken away from me? How would I react if that idea of success was pulled from me and torn from me and all of a sudden I was just a huge failure? How would I react in that? You know what's really interesting is that I've found Jesus more often than not in places where I have found failure. It's so interesting how Jesus does that in our lives. He takes the thing that you think is most important and he kind of flips it upside down, and he uses the exact opposite to actually speak to you. In fact, in one of my most raw moments, when we saw a church literally fall out from underneath us and we couldn't fix it, my wife and I talked about this, and we realized that Jesus was asking us, if everything else is taken from you, am I still enough for you? Am I still enough if your entire success is just wiped out and gone? And the word to us, the word of the Lord to Kelly and I at that point was, am I still enough? Are you okay with just having a relationship with me? And man, does that hurt? Doesn't that, but I want success too. And Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. Your sustenance is from me. Your sustainability is from me. Your fulfillment is from me. I love how bread is the illustration here. You know, bread is our enemy in this day and age. I found out when I've done diets and when I've been on running kicks and things like that, that white bread is like the enemy of everything in the world, right? You can eat candy, Skittles, you can drink, don't eat white bread. You know, it's like the worst thing in the world for some reason. I don't know, maybe I'm just exaggerating, but I've always found that to be. But it was not the case in Jesus' day. Bread was kind of a staple for people in Jesus' day. The people needed it to survive. It was different bread than we have now that we think of. But Jesus is saying something interesting here. He's actually saying that you shouldn't work hard to even sustain yourself. Like, that's confrontive. That's a thing where we go, oh, wait a minute here. Like, I'm supposed to work hard to sustain myself. But Jesus is saying, if he is the bread of life, he's saying something so deep and so unique that it hits us at the very core of our being. Because these people needed bread to survive. This was not a rich culture. They didn't have all the choices. They didn't have the McDonald's, the Burger King, the Taco Bell, and all the things that they could possibly eat out there. They had a couple options, and bread was like the one thing. It was like the thing they ate at many of their meals. And here is Jesus is saying, don't work for the thing that sustains you all the time. Don't work for that thing. It kind of this idea that is not our job. It's actually Jesus' job. Jesus is the one who sustains. This goes against all our common instinct. We do our best to sustain ourselves. And that's not a bad thing at times. But ultimately, Jesus says, don't waste your time on that. If you're seeking me, you desire me, I'll provide for all of those things that you need. You know, I love how hunger preaches at us, doesn't it? Hunger, just raw hunger. Within a few hours without food, we become frail, lethargic, depressed, despairing. When my blood sugar's low and the world's coming to an end. In fact, in the Larson household, when we don't eat in a while, we have a term for that. We call it hangry. It's a mix between hungry and angry. That's what happens to the Larsons when we don't eat for a little while, you know. Hunger tells us almost on an hourly basis that we are not self-sufficient, that we are not independent, we do not have life to sustain ourselves. We have very limited reserves. Unless we replenish those with something, we will die. Life must constantly come from outside of us. And here's Jesus saying, if I'm your one desire, if I'm your bread of life, if I'm the thing that sustains you, I'll meet your needs in that moment. If I'm the thing that you can turn to and say yes to, then on a constant basis, I will provide for you. I love that. We have no life within us ourselves. We're empty, needy, weak, dependent creatures who need something outside of ourselves to survive. Here's something we all need to hear today. God did not design us to be self-sustaining. God didn't design us to be self-sustaining, and we try so hard. Our desire, I think, for many of us is to be self-sustaining, whether that's self-sustaining through that romantic love, through that job, through that nest egg, through the security that you're trying to build. Here's Jesus kind of confronting that and saying, got a better thing for you. I want you to desire me more than anything else, and I will ultimately sustain you. I will be your greatest desire. God wants to be our desire, and he wants us to know that we desperately need him. Let me turn the corner today to help you learn how to desire Jesus in the remaining couple minutes that I have here. You may think that the real lesson of John 6 and Jesus saying, I am the bread of life, is the main point, that Jesus is the bread of life, and that's the whole point of this passage here. And I think it is a main point, but I think we find the main point as we read a little further in John chapter 6, and we see what Jesus is ultimately aiming at us. And I'm hoping this will give you something in how you desire him more than anything else. Would you read with me in the final few verses of John 6 and verse 41 and following? So the Jews grumbled about him because he said, I am the bread that came down from heaven. They said, is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How does he now say, I have come down from heaven? Jesus said to them, do not grumble about yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me, not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes has eternal life. And then he repeats it, I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I will give him for the life of the world is my flesh. The Jews then disputed among themselves, saying, how can this man give us flesh to eat? So Jesus said to them, here's where it gets intense, truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me, he also will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not as the fathers ate and died. Whoever feeds on this bread will live forever. Jesus said these things in the synagogue as he taught at Capernaum. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, this is hard. This is hard saying. Who can listen to it? But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to them, do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is of no avail. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning those who did not believe and who it was who would betray him. And he said, this is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it granted to him by the Father. Verse 66, after this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. Jesus said to the 12, do you want to go away as well? Simon Peter answered to him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Here's the thing, very intense words. Jesus doesn't just want people who are going to follow him and be fans of him, just to say, I get it, I want him, I think he's cool and all that kind of stuff. Jesus wants followers. The point of the bread of life speech is that there is kind of a deep way of partaking in Christ. There's something deeper than we can understand. And he's not talking about cannibalism or something like that here. We have to understand in John, many times Jesus uses symbolic language to express a real reality, a spiritual reality. And when he's saying this, he wants people to be all in. He wants people to partake in Jesus, to say, I want all of him. In other words, what I would say today is he wants more of completely committed followers, more than just fans of Jesus. More than just people who say, yeah, I think Jesus is great. I'm glad he's on my team. He wants people who follow him deeply and passionately and say, I do desire him fully. Think about the definitions here. A fan is an enthusiastic admirer, and we're all fans of different things. Many of us are sports fans in here. We watch the games. We have fans such as Russell Wilson. I think sometimes we think we follow Jesus like we follow Russell Wilson or something like that. And yet Jesus is saying, I want more from you. I want more than fanhood. I want followership from you. I want you to actually do the things that I'm saying. I want you to chase after me. And that's how you desire me, is you actually take next steps with me. And so it's more than just saying in your heart, okay, yes, I want Jesus to be the best. But it's actually taking steps to make that happen. And we notice here in verse 66, when he says these hard words to the disciples, many of them say, I'm not in. I can't do that. I'm more of the guy who sits on the sidelines and watches and thinks it's cool. And Jesus is saying, I want you all in. I want you to jump in. It's a very real possibility that many of us are not followers, but we're more than fans of Jesus. We're simply fans of Jesus. And the idea is, do we come together once a week to kind of be fans of Jesus? We sit in our seats, we sing our songs, we clap actually, we don't clap our hands around here. We got like clap apnea or something in here, I don't know what it is. We don't clap for some reason, but we do things here. Are we fans of Jesus, or are we followers of him? Do we say, what do you want for me, Lord, in this moment? How can I follow you every single day? This is how we ultimately desire him more than anything else. We start to make that pattern in our life where we say, I want to follow you in each thing you're calling me to. Not just to listen from a distance, but to dive headlong in to what he wants us to do. One of the best ways we can move from fan to follower is to show our dependence on Jesus in all of our life, to talk about his sustenance and how he provided for you, to start mentioning him to friends and family, to coworkers. How did you make it through that tough time? Because Jesus is enough for me. Just saying the word Jesus sometimes is a huge win in many of our relationships. I get that. Jesus wants us to tell other people about the greatest desire we should have, that everyone should know him. In conclusion here, have you ever been to a great restaurant before? Yeah, all of us have been to great restaurants, right? We love that. What do we love about great restaurants? We love the food, we love the experience, we love all that stuff. And then what do we do as soon as we go there? We Facebook about it. We take pictures of our food, put it on Instagram. Some of you do, which makes us all drool or laugh at you depending on the moment, whatever it is. We get all excited. We want to tell everyone about the amazing meal we just had. Alternatively, we had the worst food in the world. We always don't go there. You'll get like Giardia or something. You don't want to go to that place, But rather, when we find these places where we eat the greatest bread in the world, if you will, we tell everyone about it. We become evangelists of that restaurant, if you will, and it just comes naturally. The reality is, if Jesus becomes our sustenance, our bread, our desire, we're going to share it with everyone we know. It's going to be this sense that it just comes out of us. It moves from fan to follower at that moment. When we desire Jesus more than anything else is when we start expressing him to the people around us. Jesus is amazing. In the very beginning of John 6, Jesus was getting away from his people because they were impressed with the signs. They were really just a bunch of fans. They were following him to see the miracles, see the things that were happening there. And he does this amazing miracle right there as well, even when they wander away from him. And as I told you at the beginning, Jesus feeds all of these people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. Everyone finishes their meal, and the Bible says that they had a sufficient amount, and they were given all that they wanted. And here's the thing, they had 12 baskets left over at the end of John. We get all geeked out about why was there 12 basketfuls left over? Why is that? We have all these symbolic things and stuff that come out of there. And I've wondered, how come there was so much left over? And what's the lesson, if you will, of the leftovers? Kelly and I went to this Indian place on Friday for lunch. It was phenomenal. It was in Redmond called Kanishka Cuisine. If you haven't eaten there, you're missing out. The thing about Indian food during lunch is it's always a buffet, right? And so I always just pound the food away, and then I feel like death afterwards, right? I'm like, no, this is so good. No. Oh, and then I'm like, what have I done to myself? I get done. And what if the lesson of the leftover baskets is there's always more of Jesus that's available? What if the lesson is not some symbolic thing, like, oh, it's cool, there's 12 baskets, 12 tribes, it could be smart. But what if the lesson is that there's always more of Jesus that we can seek? Like the Bible says that everyone ate their fill and was satisfied. Those are the words at the beginning of John. I wish I could read it. We had more time. But then they collected all this stuff, collected 12 basketfuls, and they sat them there. What if the lesson there for you and I today is that there's always more of Jesus that we can have? That we can always desire more. We can always push forward our relationship with him. Bread, the living bread, can sustain our life, but only if we eat it. In a moment here, we get a chance to respond to the living bread, the one who said, I am the bread of life. And we get a chance here at Imprint Church to do several things. We get to worship. We get to sing songs together, which is a beautiful thing. We get to take communion. We take communion here, and some people ask about this symbolism in John 6, whether this is a communion symbol or not. I don't think it's directly correlated to this, but I think it definitely gives us a picture of what this means to receive Christ by faith and say yes to him. And ultimately, he becomes your sustenance. And I think we get a chance here in just a few minutes to wander up here to take the bread and dip it in the cup and receive that as a way to say, I'm all in. I want to move from fan to follower. I want Jesus to be my ultimate desire. I want to know that there's always something left over that I can come before him and experience him. We can give. We have giving baskets on our tables up there as well, and many of us give out of a profound sense of gratitude for what Jesus has done for us. And we come and say, yeah, I want to give because he's given to me. So in just a moment here, would you respond to the Lord? This is the moment you get a chance to actually say, yeah, I want to desire Jesus more than anything else. And maybe it just starts with a prayer today. Maybe you don't know Jesus in here today. Maybe you've heard this idea and you are sitting there and the bread's before you. You can leave it there or you can receive it today. You can eat it by faith, if you will, and symbolically understand that Jesus is for you and he wants to be your ultimate desire as well. And so as we come to worship this morning, come to our response time, I want to encourage you to respond well to Jesus. We have prayer people who would be willing to pray for you as well, and you're welcome to pray during our time of worship. And, as we sing together all these songs, I want to encourage you to respond to the Lord in great ways this morning. I'm excited about this, and I'm excited for Jesus to be our greatest desire. Let's pray about these things together. Lord, thank you so much for your word to us. God, I'm thankful today that you are the bread of life. God, you want to sustain us. You want to be the one that ultimately we turn to for our sustenance, for our life. God, I would pray that each one of us would desire you deeply today. God, it's unique. We live in a place, Lord, where it's so easy to just feel like we can sustain our own lives and do our own thing. And yet, God, you're calling us. You're asking us today for more. You're asking us to dive deeper in that relationship with you. Maybe for some of us, you're asking us to take that first step of saying, yeah, I want to partake in this. I want to understand who Jesus is. If this is really true, I want to jump in. And that's great. But Lord, for those of us who've known you for years, this is a challenge. This is a challenge to remember there's always leftovers. There's always more of you that we can experience each and every day. And Lord, I pray that we would take steps to move from fan to follower. Maybe we would share Jesus with a coworker or something, or with a friend. God, may you ultimately be our greatest desire. May you sustain us. May we understand that you are to be the one desire we have. God, I'm thankful for that this morning. Help us as we worship to experience you, the living Jesus who's with us right now. Pray all these things in your great name. Amen.